Your mother was a daughter before she was your mother. When she was 15, Adaeze wrote a list. The list had a title. The title was The Things I Will Never Do. The list had 11 items. She kept that list for 20 years. She kept the list very well. Then one Tuesday, in her own kitchen, in her own life, she heard a tone come out of her own mouth. Her 5-year-old daughter had spilled a glass of juice. The juice was running off the kitchen counter onto a pile of post. And Adaeze said in a voice that was not her own, "What is wrong with you?" Her daughter looked up. The juice kept running. And Adaeze, 36 years old, professionally trained, emotionally articulate, mother of a child she would die for, felt the floor go out from underneath her. Because the voice she had just used, the voice that had come out of her without permission, she had heard that voice before. She had heard it for the first 18 years of her life. Welcome. Today is the final episode of this series, and today we are going to talk about the moment almost every woman eventually has to face, the moment she hears her mother in her own voice. What it means, what it does not mean, and what to do with it. I'm Remi. I'm a psychotherapy student, and I help you understand why you do what you do. So let us begin. Adaeze is 36. She's a project manager at a mid-sized firm. She has been with her partner for 9 years. They have a daughter called Iyana, who is 5 and who, depending on the day, is either the funniest person in the house or the most willful. Adaeze loves her daughter. Honestly, like she loved her daughter the way the women in this series have loved everything properly with everything she has. She had also decided a long time before Iyana was born that her daughter would have a very different mother to the one she had. Adaeze's mother was a complicated woman. Well, that is the phrase Adaeze uses. When anyone dares to ask her, she was complicated. Her mother was sometimes radiant and sometimes silent and sometimes cruel, and Adaeze never knew which mother would come down to breakfast. Her mother came to England in her 20s, alone with a baby. Her mother carried things she did not have the language to put down. Her mother loved her children fiercely in a way they could feel and also could not always reach. Adaeze made the list at 15. I will never raise my voice at my child. I will never give the silent treatment. I will never say what is wrong with you. I will never tell my daughter that she's too much. I will never ever compare my daughter to other people's daughters. I will never withdraw love as punishment. There were 11 items, but I will not read all of them to you today. When Iyana was born, right, Adaeze read the list again in the hospital on her phone. She had typed it up at uni. She kept it in a folder called important. She made the silent vow you make when you become a mother. She said, the chain stops here. For 5 years, the change stopped. For 5 years, Adaeze was the mother she had wanted and never had. She held boundaries calmly. She apologized when she was wrong. She let her daughter be every shape of feeling, the messy ones, the loud ones, the ones her own mother would have shamed. She was tired. She was so tired, but she was doing it. She was doing the work. And then on this Tuesday, a glass of juice, a pile of posts, the juice running over the edge, and a voice coming out of her own mouth that she did not put there. What is wrong with you? Iyana looked up. Iyana was 5. Iyana did not know that her mother had just been thrown 30 years backwards in a single sentence. Adaeze did know, and Adaeze, who had kept the list for 20 years, sat down on the kitchen floor in a way that scared her daughter and started to cry. This is the moment we are talking about today. Now, I want to introduce you to a phrase that, if you are a daughter, a mother, will probably stay with you for the rest of your life. In 1975, a child psychoanalyst called Selma Freiberg, with her colleagues Edna Adelson and Vivian Shapiro, published a paper. The paper was called Ghosts in the Nursery. It was published in the Journal of the American Academy of Child Psychiatry. The opening lines of that paper are some of the most quoted lines in modern psychology. Freiberg wrote, "In every nursery there are ghosts. They are visitors from the unremembered past of the parents, the uninvited guests at the christening." What she meant was this: when a parent has not yet processed something painful from her own childhood, the unprocessed thing does not stay in the past. It walks into the room with her, and it sits at the table, and it speaks through her in the moments she does not choose, especially in moments of stress, especially when her own child mirrors a vulnerability she once had. Now, Adese's ghost was not her mother. Her mother is alive, and they have a complicated, remember, loving, careful relationship. The ghost was the moment when Adaeze was 7 that she spilled something on her mother's important papers, and her mother said, "What is wrong with you?" in a tone Adaeze never forgot. That tone, that exact tone, had been waiting in Adaeze's nervous system for 29 years. It came out on Tuesday. It came out because her own daughter, in spilling juice, brushed against the same nerve. This is what the research calls intergenerational transmission, and it has been studied very carefully for the last 50 years. Now, there is a body of work building on Freiberg, right? Conducted by researchers like Mary Main, Peter Fonagy, and Howard and Miriam Steele, that uses something called the adult attachment interview. Now, the interview measures how a parent talks about her own childhood. The findings are remarkably consistent. The way a parent has processed her own early experiences is one of the strongest predictors of how her child will attach to her. I know, right? What that means in plain language is this: the work we do on ourselves, even before our children can understand it, becomes the safety they grow up inside. Now, I need to add something here that the research also says, and that almost nobody on social media is naming. In 2005, a researcher called Alicia Lieberman, who had built her career on Freiberg's work, published a paper called Angels in the Nursery. The argument of that paper, which was published in the Infant Mental Health Journal, was that ghosts are not the only things our parents live with us. There are also angels. There are the moments your mother held you when you were sick, the way she pronounced your name, the song she hummed without even thinking, when she was happy that you can still hear in your head, the food made when you came home, the arms she held you in when she could. Those angels also transmit, and the angels are the resources you draw on, often unconsciously, when you parent your own child. Now, this is extremely important because the conversation about generational patterns on social media has become very one sided. We have learned the language of the ghost, we have not learned the language of the angel. The truth, which the research keeps confirming, is that almost no mother is one or the other. Most of our mothers gave us both imperfectly with what they had. And what they had was almost always less than they needed. Now, in the model I am training in, we talk about something called a script, a set of unspoken rules a child writes about how love works, how she's loved, how she should love. The script gets handed down. It does not get sat down with the daughter and explained. It gets passed in the textures of how mothers respond to their daughters' emotions year after year. Adaeze's script reads: to be loved, you must not make a mess. To be safe, you must not be too much. She has been honoring that script since she was old enough to speak. The cruelty is that her mother had a similar script. So did her grandmother. So did her great grandmother, in a village Adaeze has never been to, in a country whose currency has changed twice since. The chain is really long. The chain is also breakable, not by willpower, not by lists written at 15, by work, by awareness, by the slow, expensive, unglamorous practice of feeling what your mother could not afford to feel, so that your daughter does not have to feel it on your behalf. Now, let's get to some questions. And again, I am not going to tell you what your mother did or did not give you. I am a psychotherapy student. This is your work, and a clinician's as well, in a room I am not in. What I am going to ask you is this: when you imagine yourself parenting or partnering or simply moving through a normal day, what is the voice in your head that you most fear hearing? Whose voice is it? Now, when you were a child, in moments of distress, what did you learn was the right way to ask for comfort? And what did you learn would happen if you asked the wrong way? What is the one thing your mother gave you that you would carry gladly into another generation? Be specific. The way she made tea, a particular kindness, a song. You see, these three questions taken together will tell you something. They will tell you the shape of what was, what is, and what could be. The answers belong to you. Now, here is what I want you to know while you live today. If you have ever heard your mother's voice come out of your own mouth, you are not failing. We've all been there. You are simply noticing. Noticing is not the end of the work. Noticing is where the work becomes possible. Adaeze went to therapy after that Tuesday, not for the first time, but for the first time with this specific question. Please tell me, which one of the four women's stories sat closest home? Over the next 4 weeks, I'm going to be answering your questions and shaping what comes next on this channel based on what you tell me that you need. Thank you so much for being here for all 4 weeks, for trusting me with this conversation. Once again, I'm Remi Seun-Aladejana, and I'll see you next Thursday. Bye bye.